Welcome, everyone. We are very delighted that you're joining us today. We realize the Reg BI deadline is only 54 days away and thought it would be topical to dive into what good faith compliance means, especially in a Reg BI capacity. A few quick housekeeping items before we begin. We welcome your questions throughout the presentation. Please use the chat dialog box that you see at the bottom of your screen to log your questions and address them to InvestorCOM. We have allotted time at the end of today's presentation to take up your questions. As you may have noticed, we are recording this session and we'll share the recording after the session. And to avoid any background noise, we will be muting our participants' microphones. All right, so let's get right into it. Today we have David Reeves, CEO of InvestorCOM, myself, and Tito Pombra, President of Advisor Compliance Consulting. Let me turn it over to David to begin the introductions.
Thanks very much, Param, and thank you to everyone who's joining us this afternoon. My name is David Reeves. I'm the founder and CEO of InvestorCOM. While we're relatively new to the US market, we have been partnering with global wealth leaders for over 20 years. And our mantra is to provide compliance pain relief. And hopefully today you'll get a sense of our views of the good faith compliance requirements and also some solutions that may assist with meeting Reg BI.
Thanks, David. And the voice you're hearing is Param Naseris. I'm the VP of Regulatory Strategy at InvestorCOM, and I spent over a decade at a Canadian-based regulatory organization and a few years at a global management consultancy. I'll pass it over to Tito.
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Tito Pombra. I am founder and president of Advisor Compliance Consulting in a small boutique compliance consulting firm in San Francisco Bay Area. I have been in the industry for about 30 plus years, and I've been doing compliance for about 23 years in a variety of different roles in in-house firms in the Bay Area, in consulting role now, and I was most recently a chief compliance officer for a large advisor out of San Francisco. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tito. So our plan for the next 30 minutes or so is to briefly touch on the Reg BI journey and highlight how the concept of good faith compliance arose. We want to explore the general meaning of good faith compliance and take a deeper dive into the application of this concept in each of the Reg BI pillars. Lastly, we'll take a few minutes, as stated earlier, to address any questions that you may have. Great. Since everyone likes timelines, let's start here. Tito, with the June 30th deadline around the corner, can you talk a bit about what the final 54 days will look like?
Sure. So hopefully everybody is aware the rule came out, back last year, finalized by the SEC. Obviously, there was some chat about delaying, possible delay, but Chairman Clayton said that the rule has been around for a while and feels that most firms should be prepared for the rule implementation, and it's a really important rule, so critical to the investment community and the retail investors, where broker dealers and advisors need to do what's the best interest of their clients. So based on that, we have like Param said, 54 days to comply to the rule. So what should be doing right now obviously is completing or creating their form CRS on the BD IA side. If you're dual registrant, you have more to do, more to write. They need to revise their policy and procedures to describe the firm's process on updating form CRS. They need to obviously within 30 days of any changes, if there are any changes in the form CRS that you file, it becomes materially inaccurate, you need to update those. You need to deliver the form CRS within 60 days of the event necessitating the update. The delivery requirement is another critical one. So within 30 days of June 30th deadline, you need to deliver the form CRS to your current clients and your prospects. You need to create inventory, then rationalize on what products is best for their retail client. You need to train all your employees who are client facing. It's absolutely critical that you do that. Obviously you need to have the technology to implement the delivery of CRS, so to the clients, and that's where probably InvestorCOM solution could help you. You need to have FAQs that are in the form CRS. You need to come up with those questions. You need to come up answers so you can give it to your client-facing personnel, so they are ready to answer those questions if the clients do ask those conversation starter questions. So that's quite a lot of work within the next 54 days if you haven't started doing any of that. So I strongly encourage that you do.
Thanks, Tito. That's appreciate your nudge there for the 54 remaining days. So Reg BI has obviously been in the news. On April 2nd, the SEC announced that it would not be delaying the implementation deadline for Reg BI. And then subsequently, the Office of Compliance Inspection and Examination announced that their initial examinations will focus on assessing whether firms have, quote, made a good faith effort to implement policies and procedures reasonably designed to comply with Reg BI. Tito, do you have any insights on what this really means?
Sure. So the SEC does risk alerts to pre-warn the industry that how important these rules are and that what is required under the rules, and the whole purpose of the risk alert is that we told you so. So what it means is in good faith, and good faith means sincere effort, reasonable effort to comply with the rules by the deadlines. And if you are having a hot sheet due to the COVID-19 issues or whatever, something else happened in your firm, the good faith effort would be to reach out to the regulator and seek some relief. There is no harm doing that if you have sincerely, disruption in your business related to the virus that have material impact, and you are not able to meet the deadlines. I think the risk alert is pretty straightforward. You could read about it, but after the deadline, the SEC will either call or conduct maybe a targeted sweep on this, or maybe actual exams on part of the ongoing exam process that they are conducting. So there's quite a lot of regulatory scrutiny that will be placed on this very critical, important rule that is a game changer in the industry on how broker dealers and advisors conduct business with retail clients. So I strongly encourage everybody to take the risk alert and see if you are in compliance with what the SEC is writing about in the risk alert related to your program, related to implementation of Reg BI.
Right on, Tito. Tito, you just mentioned a few things that segue into really what the notion of good faith means. And since everyone loves word clouds, I lost that word for a second. Let's begin here. In your experience, you mentioned 23 years in the compliance industry. Can you touch on the various definitions of good faith compliance?
Sure. So the whole concept behind good faith is existing in the regulatory environment in the SEC's world for a long time. They tend to use the word good faith in many other rules and proposed rules, and interestingly, recently they did that with the mutual fund side, where the fund boards have to make good faith determination on fair valuation. There's a proposal there. So what does it really mean is, if you think of it, it means act honestly and fairly, attempt to comply, voluntarily correct failures, evaluate activities relative to rules and document vulnerabilities, interact with the regulator. So all of that, is that you have a process in place to demonstrate to the regulator that everything you do is in good faith for the best interest of your clients and nothing else. And I know there's quite a strong, verbiage related to, how you really express that. But, most important is really documentation of your efforts. You can demonstrate to the regulators that you acted in good faith and, in a sincere way. So it's extremely important to, create that program and train people on the exact way, the sincere intention to deal fairly with others. So that's the critical part here on good faith.
Right on. And what's interesting to me, sort of what stood out to me as this rule came around, was our interactions with one of our clients, and we have it on the screen here, just embracing the interaction with regulators so that they know that we're taking this seriously. And in my experience, that's been a really good channel to engage regulators on the progress that's being made, and then being specific as well. So let's dig into the details a little bit. How does the good faith principle apply to each of the 4 pillars? Are there areas that, in your experience, regulators will be less or more strict?
Well, I don't know about they'll be less or more strict, but these are the 4, disclosure or pillars that is basically part of the Reg BI in good faith for Form CRS. And I think the disclosure requirement has been around for a long time. It's all about disclosure. If you talk to seasoned compliance professionals, they'll tell you that the disclosures are critical and transparency to your clients, especially the retail clients. Look, the whole purpose of this rule is the SEC is focused on the street, right? So what does that mean? That means that they want to protect the interests of the retail clients. They want to basically curtail fraud. They want to curtail misleading disclosures. They want to curtail, they want to create transparencies where retail investors understand on what recommendations broker-dealers, advisors are making on behalf of them for their long-term investment goals. They want to curtail on what is the best fee, what is the best product, what is the lowest fee product. It doesn't have to be the lowest fee. What is the best product of the suitability or objective of the client's investment objective? So disclosure is to me is critical, and believe it or not, in the regulatory world, and a lot of past instances of regular misregulations that created a lot of rules in the last 15 years, including 20647, 38A1. Is lack of disclosures. Care obligation. We talked about that. I talked about it earlier. I mean, it's really you need to think about what your clients are investing in, or what are you recommending them. You need to have choices. You need to have products available. What are the fees? What other fees they have? What is the total cost of an investment for a client? Conflicts of interest, again, very critical, extremely critical part of the regulation. You need to disclose conflicts. Do you benefit from recommending one product over the other? What other benefits do you get? By clients trusting you and coming to you. So that's critical. And lastly, not the least, compliance. How do you comply with all of these requirements? The delivery requirements, and giving clients CRSs, and once they are becoming your client, how are you ongoing providing clients updated to CRSs and their material changes? How did you update your policy and procedures? How did you train your employees, document the training? How much training do you do on a yearly basis? All of that is absolutely critical.
Right on. You've touched on a lot of good points, and the notion of good faith, at least the clearest way, in my opinion, to look at the good faith principle is to look at what constitutes as a lack of good faith. And one of the definitions I heard recently was that a lack of good faith constitutes not having updated policies and procedures, as you said, Tito, that reflect Reg BI rules, copying and pasting policies and procedures that are not directly tailored to the individual business needs. And then, as you said about conflicts of interest, not analyzing conflicts of interest and working towards mitigating and eliminating them. So
Yeah, that's a good point, Param. Actually, mitigating and eliminating conflicts and disclosures of those conflicts are critical. I totally agree with you. So,
right on. Let's do a quick pause here. If folks have just joined the call, if you have questions, please use the chat dialog box and address them to InvestorCOM. That would be a good way to know if you have any specific questions. With that said, I'd like to thank Tito. This was a great conversation, and I hope that we can chat again later when folks insert their questions into the chat box.
my pleasure.
Okay, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes now exploring how broker-dealers and registered investment advisors are addressing the 4 regulatory pillars of Reg BI. For this part of the webinar, I'd like to invite David Reeve, our CEO, to join me. David, can you share with us your views on how wealth managers are looking at Reg BI requirements and preparing for June 30th?
Great, thank you, Param, and thank you again, Tito, for your amazing insights into good faith compliance with Reg BI. When we speak to our clients about Reg BI readiness, there seems to be 2 pretty distinct solution categories. One is process and procedures, and the other is technology. For much of Reg BI, wealth managers are focused on updating procedures, as you guys were just chatting about, introducing new policies, and educating their advisors and clients on the new Reg BI world. So let me just touch quickly on a couple of very brief examples of this. One example might be building inventories or logs of conflicts of interest, and then establishing the controls to mitigate these conflicts. Another example might be to update advisor training materials to ensure that all of your client-facing folks are educated on the new disclosure requirements. But the other big category is technology. A significant chunk of Reg BI cannot be met with processes or procedures alone. Following up on Param and Tito's comments on Reg BI and specifically around the CARE obligation and the requirement for advisors to recommend reasonably available alternative products. A large product shelf, which is the case with most broker-dealers, makes this process almost impossible without a strong technology platform. Let me just spend a couple of seconds talking about our Peer Compare application, which evaluates every single product on your shelf, and it instantly provides reasonably available product alternatives. And then it presents these results in an incredibly simple and intuitive manner. The advisor simply enters the product code or name and then clicks on Find Peer Group. In this particular case, our broker-dealer client has about 9,000 products on their shelf, and there are 111 reasonably available alternatives to this Franklin fund based on 3 key matching criteria: category, risk rating, and time horizon. You can clearly see where a recommended product sits relative to its peers and also relative to the median measures of cost, risk, and performance. In this particular case, the Franklin Fund is on the low end of MER relative to its peers. It's slightly above the median risk, and it's slightly above the median performance relative to the 111 reasonably available alternatives. Each of these recommendation transactions is captured within our Reg BI record-keeping platform. Now, advisors also need a platform to deliver Form CRS and many, many other client documents to their investors. Your compliance team also requires a platform to monitor this disclosure activity. Our Compliance Express platform is readily accessible for all point-of-sale delivery activities. And importantly, it also tracks every single disclosure event, including client receipt confirmations. Today, this platform is used by more than 25,000 advisors to meet this requirement, and it is the foundation for InvestorCOM's disclosure technology. In this particular example, you can see that I put 7 documents in my shopping cart, which I will either send to my investor or group of investors. By clicking on the link to Form CRS, you can quickly display the document for confirmation. Now, the investor experience is an email with document links to Form CRS and any other documents that I've sent with this transaction. Finally, the record-keeping component is vital. Here you can see that I have sent the documents. They've been received on April 30th at 5:10 p.m. And you can also see that Form CRS has been viewed, but the other documents have not. As I mentioned previously, many broker-dealers have very large product shelves. Reg BI requires that they monitor changes to the products that are being recommended by their advisors. The average product shelf for broker-dealers has over 10,000 products. Our data and analysis indicates that mutual funds, ETFs, and annuities have approximately 2,000 product changes every single week, which is, of course, virtually impossible for any team to track and manage. Shelf Monitor provides that function to our client by taking their unique product shelf and then returning data on every material change within the products that their advisors are selling. So it's a super powerful platform. And importantly, again, it creates an audit trail to meet Reg BI requirements. In this example, you can see that the broker shelf is approximately 15,000 products, which is common. And in a 1-week span between February 17th and February 24th of 2020, there were 769 changes, 80% of which relate to suitability. At the bottom of the screen, each change is displayed, and you can see, in this case, that I've sorted the list by percentage change in descending order. Each of these applications that I've given you a very quick overview of is delivered in the cloud and can be implemented within weeks. And importantly, increasingly importantly, in a COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 environment, where we'll have an increasingly new normal, we believe, the technology is a remote compliance platform. So not only does it support remote advisors, of course, remote investors, but it also supports remote compliance teams. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide a very brief snapshot of our technology. And now Tito Pombra and I would be thrilled to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Thank you for that, David. I would like to invite, again, if you have any questions, please use the chat dialog box at the bottom. I've pasted at the bottom of your screen here. I'm going to take a quick second to take a look at it. Okay, so we've got a question for Tito. Tito, do you recommend any best practices to comply with the books and records requirements of Form CRS delivery?
Well, I think one of the practices that David just talked about is, automated solution, right? So now if you don't have the means of having automation solutions, I would strongly encourage doing it the old way. If you're a smaller firm, email the Form CRS to your client with maybe a return receipt and have the email documented in some kind of a log, for the delivery. And if you are delivering a physical Form CRS to your client, maybe have client acknowledge back to you that they received this the Form CRS, and you can have demonstrate that you have delivered the Form CRS to your clients. Now, there might be existing systems in your compliance technology in your firm that you might be using. You probably want to evaluate and see if there is some fixed feasibility into that existing system. Maybe your CRM or compliance system that has Form CRS delivery and documentation audit trail. So
great. Tito, there's one more question for you here. I think it follows up on the disclosure requirements. As a broker dealer, can I satisfy the disclosure obligation under Reg BI with only my form CRS?
Well, that's an interesting question. Now, the CRS is designed to disclose disclosures, but if you have, look, CRS does not have a lot of space to disclose all your disclosures, so you'll have to summarize it in plain English and have your material and critical disclosures disclosed. Now, as a broker dealer, you're recommending, let's say, for example, funds to your client. The other disclosures that you'll have to provide clients in addition to the CRS would be the fund prospectus. I think there is an opportunity for clients in the CRS and the conversation start to ask you more questions related to disclosures. So that's probably where you want to be prepared to answer those questions and provide additional disclosures once the clients ask for them. Maybe a detailed fee schedule or maybe a detailed conflicts inventory that is summarized in your form CRS.
Thanks, Tito. Okay, David, we've got a question for you. What if the peer compare tool that you illustrated earlier identifies that an investment recommendation is more costly than its peer group, but still in the best interest of the client? What should the broker or advisor do then?
That's a great question. It's one that we've had many conversations with our clients about. Essentially is the care obligation where you're required to recommend reasonably available alternatives. Is that directional in terms of recommending the lowest cost product? And the answer to that question is no. That, what's important is, first of all, this is a point in time disclosure event that you need to be able to prove that you have considered reasonably available alternatives. And so when you're looking at a fund, it may well be a cost that's higher than the median. So this is not all about cost. As I think everyone knows, there's many factors that would influence a recommendation, and of course, cost, risk, and performance are three of them. But you could also be thinking about suitability around around a particular portfolio that you're managing for a client and diversification within that. So I think the point of reasonably available alternatives, and certainly the design point of our peer compare application, is to make the comparison very simple and very transparent. And ultimately, the recommendation is up to the advisor.
Thank you, David. This one's sort of doesn't have anybody. The question is not asking for any particular speaker, so I'll just ask it and maybe I'll jump into it quickly. Are there specific recommendations that you believe require additional level of documentation versus others? So as I read this question, I think the best response, as I would tackle it, would be the extent of documentation is obviously a risk-based decision for each firm. So this is one of those it depends responses. From our side at InvestorCOM, we've observed a range of different practices from our clients. There are, of course, those clients who are more on the prudent side and choose to document every single recommendation. So whether we're talking about an account opening or an individual investment recommendation, everything's being recorded and kept in an audit trail. And then there are firms who are have a higher risk appetite and who choose to make a risk-based decision when it comes to documenting and record retention. So for example, we've seen regulators have expressed some heightened degree of scrutiny around higher risk recommendations. So that could be specific types of account openings or complex securities that have been in the limelight for some time now. And some clients have chosen to implement rigorous documentation and record keeping with respect to those specific recommendations. So I think the key response here is that technology is your friend, and technology can help you document whatever you believe to be the risks, and the practices on that framework are kind of diverse and along the paradigm. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just asking for any other comments.
Okay, yes, I would add to that is that the regulators like the use of technology in implementing and complying with regulatory and the federal securities law and the rules. I totally agree with you, and I think it's actually absolutely critical for broker dealers to the compliance people to train their broker dealer client facing employees that they need to be very cautious about creating records of the recommendations that they're making their clients, even if they don't make those investment choices. So.
Right. This, actually, I see one more question here, Tito. I think it touches on what you said, and then you may have talked about this earlier. There's a question that FINRA has recommended firms address conflicts of interest related to products. What does this entail?
Well, so one of the issues with recommending products is the conflicts exist is that if you are getting a fee as a dealer from the sponsor who product you're recommending, for example, mutual funds, right? So if you get some kind of a 12b1 fee or some other arrangement you have, supermarket, terminal load, whatever, those are the disclosures that on the product they're talking about. The other is, if you are in a commission-based structure to recommend, investments to your clients, those are the conflicts. If there is higher commission on one product and a lower commission on the other product, and you keep on, recommending the higher commission product, you make more money. That's what the angle here FINRA is taking, is that you need to disclose those conflicts, and you need to disclose upfront that why you're recommending the product if it's under the investment objective of the client, and not from the perspective of you getting more money out of it. So
right, and that's right on, Tito. Completely agree, and I think that's good sound advice. One of the practices that's come up with some of our clients is, I think, what David touched on, which is just monitoring your product shelf. And one of the suggestions that FINRA has made in the Q&As that they've sent out that I've read has suggested that narrowing the selection of products that are available to your registered representative. So not all of your products are going to be appropriate for all of your clients. You may have fee-sensitive clients who may not necessarily be looking to invest in high-fee products. And so sort of dissecting and analyzing and monitoring changes of your products on an ongoing basis would certainly be a prudent step there.
Hey, Param, it's Dave again. I just thought I'd jump in on that because that's a big topic, this whole kind of shelf narrowing strategy around, managing to a KYP requirement. And that's certainly captured in the Reg BI regulation, as well as the client focus reform regulation in Canada. And I think one of the unintended consequences of increasing expectations around KYP is shelves being shortened or reduced in size. But ultimately, we were talking to a client the other day that has over 50,000 products on the shelf. If you reduce that to 10,000, I mean, you're still dealing with a incredible amount of data, and ultimately technology is the only solution. I personally would argue, and I think a lot of people feel the same way, that reducing the product shelf is probably not in the best interest of the client. Ensuring that you have a broad shelf of product options for your clients is ultimately what certainly a lot of independent advisors are interested in. So there is a technology solution to help you monitor that and to eliminate all the noise of non-material changes and help you zero in on specifically what you need to worry about. And whether it's our technology or others, Morningstar and others have technologies that offer this kind of capability. I think that's a clear option versus simply reducing your shelf size.
Thanks, David. Good thing you spoke up, David, because there's another question for you. So it says, David, how does your disclosure solution work if most of our disclosures are in person or on paper?
Well, I think, it's interesting, the whole world of disclosure, when you say in person and on paper, I'm sure that's not a recent view that, we're definitely moving into a world that, many people are viewing this sort of post coronavirus period as being, a pretty major reset, much more to a digital posture. But, ultimately, if you're providing disclosure in person, our platform supports that. You can, have your iPad in front of your client and provide the disclosure, the Form CRS and other document disclosures to your client. And the platform captures that. It also captures paper delivery. The one thing I would say, though, is that, this is a real opportunity to digitize a lot of your communications with your clients. And, if it's paper-based today, that's pretty tricky to track and manage. And, whereas digital communications are much less tricky. And, what we see with clients is that there's a high adoption rate of digital for compliance documents such as Form CRS. Even if you have clients that prefer, for example, paper statements, we still see that, typically clients desire digital communications. And ultimately, a lot of this disclosure needs to happen at point of sale. So you don't really have the luxury of, several days of mailing a document, driving you back to digital disclosure.
Thanks, David. I think, with some of my experience in a regulatory capacity, I have one comment to make on that sort of in-person paper delivery, and it's really just mitigating potential risks, because usually when regulators do any form of audits, right, it happens after the fact. So sort of take that scenario of physical delivery of documents and then not having any record retention behind it to back it up. And think about the fact that regulators, let's just say 2, 3, maybe longer period of time, go in and do an audit and say, okay, what sort of forms do you have? What sort of records and retention tools do you have to disclose, to illustrate to us that you've kept track of, let's just say, Form CRS delivery, reasonably available alternatives, recommendations, whatnot, right? And quite often when regulators see that there are no record-keeping metrics or tools in place, that's when those flags or cautionary flags go up, and really the floodgates open up, and you have to spend way more time and resources at that point in time. So if you have some, as David said, some digital solutions around disclosure and record retention, specifically as the requirements around disclosure and Form CRS and recommendations amp up, it would probably be a really reasonable and prudent approach going forward. Okay, let me just do a quick check for any other questions. Okay, I don't see any. With that said, I'd like to sincerely, on behalf of InvestorCOM, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you have any outstanding questions or would like to chat further on any of these topics discussed today, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and you've got everybody's emails and Tito's email there too. After today's session, a follow-up, you'll be receiving a short follow-up survey and our white paper. We thank you again for your time and have a great day.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.